Welcome to Take Another Look, your eye on the Albuquerque art scene. I'm your host, Tony DellaFlora. Albuquerque is sometimes seen as a tough place to make a living as an artist, but for more than 3 decades, the Urban Enhancement Trust Fund has been a beacon of light. With me today to discuss the history of the program and the upcoming funding cycle is UETF Coordinator Matt Carter. Good to have you here today, Matt.
Thanks, good to be here.
It's that time again.
Yes, it is.
Let's hand out some money.
Yeah, I wish it was that easy, right?
Right. Well, first, for folks who don't know anything about the program, let's talk, how long has the Urban Enhancement Trust Fund been around?
The Urban Enhancement Trust Fund was established in 1983, so it's 33 years now.
And it was a sort of an interesting story about how that came about, because normally people don't throw money at the arts here. So.
No. Well, what happened was basically the city and state was owed back gross receipt taxes, and so they ended up going after those back receipts tax from Sandia Labs, and when the money influxed into the city, the state received some, and then the city received the remaining amount. And the city councilors at the time decided, instead of just putting it into the general bonds or the general operating fund, to turn it into a trust fund for arts organizations, as well. Originally, it was also arts and capital projects.
Right. Okay. And in about 2004, they made it strictly arts.
Exactly.
So.
The bonds were doing really, really well for the city, and so they felt that they didn't need to augment parks and any other city amenities developments with UETF. So they switched it over to just arts organizations funding.
Yeah. And if you've lived in this town for any length of time, you've been to a UETF funded event somewhere. How many projects has UETF?
Yeah, well, it's easier to count the projects than the organizations, because the UETF funds projects. So we have, over the last 33 years, have funded roughly around 438 projects.
Okay, great. And again, some of those are repeats. I mean, some of the bigger events get money.
Right.
Yeah, and I must mention, in the interest of full disclosure to folks, I have been with 2 of the organizations that have received UETF grants, so if I seem like I'm a bit of a cheerleader, that may be why, but it's come in handy for some projects I was working on. Again, it started with about $8 million, was it?
Yeah, $8 million came into the kind of coffers, and like $2 million went back to the state, and the remaining $6 million was for urban enhancement.
Okay, and so now, over the course of this, how much in grant funding have you given out?
I think roughly about $16 million.
Wow.
And the way it works is that the trust fund is invested, and so the projected earnings are used for funding. So 90% of the projected earnings are used to fund the projects, and then 10% is put back into the corpus to keep the corpus growing and healthy and alive. So that's very unique, and we're very lucky to have that.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons we're doing the show today is, in fact, that the next application cycle is coming up. So when does that start? When can people start putting in applications?
May 1st. We're gonna have a couple information meetings coming up in the next week or so, but the applications will be available online and from our office on May 1st.
Okay. And where online can they go to find those applications?
The Urban Enhancement website. So it's basically just cabq.gov/UETF.
Okay. All right. And when is the deadline?
The deadline's actually going to be June 30th.
Okay.
So from the last time we talked, we were kind of floating different dates around, but we finalized. The deadline will be, it's a Thursday, June 30th, 2016.
So you have about 2 months.
You have about 2 months,
If you can't get it done in 2 months, forget it anyway.
Exactly.
And where can folks go if they have questions about something on the application?
They can call me and or email me directly, and I'll be more than willing to sit down and have a conversation, either over the phone, or if you want to come to the office, we can sit down and talk about the process and how to apply and all those things.
Okay. What is the pool of money available that's going to be available on this next cycle?
Currently, we have $300,000 that we're going to be able to award.
Okay. All right. Now, for folks who are maybe at an arts organization or don't know about this grant, what are the categories that you're looking at to fund?
Well, we fund kind of the non-visual arts, even though in historically we have funded some visual arts projects, but it really falls in the other categories of dance, literature, music, theater, and history.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. What are, again, I've mentioned before, if you've been here, you've been to an event that's been sponsored. What are some of the organizations that people would know that have received grants over the years?
The Albuquerque Folk Festival we've been sponsoring them for the last several festivals, which has been great. The National Institute of Flamenco, the Asian American Festival that sometimes is held here at Civic Plaza. Also, we've done Albuquerque. We've done events through New Mexico Young Actors, help fund their theater stuff that happens at the Chemo Theater, as well as other music organizations as Chatter, as well as theater in terms of the Mother Road Theater and Fusion Theater.
Fusion,
Company.
right, yeah. And again, one of my projects, the Painting Albuquerque documentary that we did through GOV-TV.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was a great project. I mean, the video was great. We're really happy to have been involved with that particular project.
Yeah. It's quite a range of organizations and stuff. I mean, you're probably used to it, but most people probably don't realize everything that's here in this city.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of the arts.
Yeah.
And how many like applications will you typically get in a cycle?
Usually we get about it ranges, but we're roughly probably about between 60 and 70 applications. And sometimes it's been higher, but the last several cycles it's been hovering around 60 to 70, and we end up trying to fund as much as we can, even though funds are slowly have been kind of creeping down. But we currently are funding around 36 organizations right now in the current cycle.
Oh, great. So. Okay. Now, we should be clear on this with folks. It does have some limitations. The money has to go specifically for a project.
Yes.
And it can't go for what else?
Well, it can't go for, rental. Well, it can't go for like utilities. It can't go for improvements of your building or purchasing of specific equipment or anything like that. Now, if you're renting, let's say tents or sound equipment or something like that for performance, that's completely fine. But you can't purchase things, because that then gets into a whole other,
like anti-donation
issues, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So there are a little bit limitations, and the other thing that that is really a requirement is that you have to be a New Mexico 501c3 to be eligible. Right. Right. And I probably jumped ahead on your question.
Okay. Well, that's okay. We'll get back to that, but yeah. Talk about the funding cycle, because it's not an annual thing per se. How does that work?
It's a 2-year funding cycle. So what we're looking at doing, the funding cycle that's coming up is the fiscal year, FY 18-19, and obviously we're in 2016, but the city's fiscal year is from July 1 to June 30th. So funds won't become available until July 1, 2017, which is
right. Okay. Yeah.
Fiscal year 18.
Yeah.
So it gets a little.
So hurry up and apply, but plan on waiting for a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, so we're a year and a half out, essentially. You have to have time to give the organizations to fill out their application. Then you have to have time for the Urban Enhancement Trust Fund Committee to review all those applications. If you imagine if you had 60 applications, asking for funding, you have to spend the time to review and make sure that it fits all the criteria and and go from there.
Right. For folks thinking about applying, let's talk about the size of the grants. I'm sure everybody wants $50,000 for whatever their project is. That's not going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen. This year we actually are putting a limit on a maximum of what you can request. It's $12,000 that you can request.
That's good to know.
But grants do range from $2,000 to $12,000, and so if you have some organizations that are smaller organizations, they don't need a $12,000 grant because they might be putting on a small music ensemble or something like that, and so those funds could be used for that, and so it might be a $2,000 grant or $3,000 grant.
Right.
And and this is also it's a 2-year project, or it's a 2-year funding cycle.
Right.
So, but that doesn't mean that your project has to go through both years. We've have funded projects that are a one-time project. For example, we did an exhibition, or the University of New Mexico Museum did an exhibition, and it was only going to be offered in that first year of the grant. And it was a strong project, and the committee funded it. And then, the second year,
Right. I understand. It's got to be a real balancing act. You want to give sufficient funding. You don't want. There's no point in giving somebody, not enough to pull off a project.
Right.
At the same time, you want to affect as many organizations as you possibly can. Right.
Right.
I mean, I assume that's basically part of the criteria when you're selecting these things.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that they're looking at is, based on the needs, based on what is available, based on how their budget's looking. I mean, the committee's looking at a wide variety of things when they're reviewing this. There is a set of criteria that they're basing their decision making off of. So they're kind of going through and listing it and seeing how it measures up, and then at that particular time, discussions are made, about what to fund and how to fund. So.
Yeah. Now, again, in going back more for the specific criteria of the application, you'd mentioned that you're looking at nonprofits, basically 501c3s, but there is an option for groups that aren't a 501c3.
Right.
How does that work?
Well, and this is really unique in UETF because we've been looking into this. Not all granting organizations have this flexibility, but for those organizations that are small, that might be emerging, that might not have established a 501c3 or gone into the nonprofit status yet, you can apply using a fiscal sponsor who has a New Mexico 501c3 already established. It needs to really kind of be lined up with their mission as well. I mean, you just can't have, one organization that has nothing to do with the arts sponsoring an organization that is doing something with the arts, unless their mission somehow meets somewhere in the middle. So we like to kind of make sure that it's lined up on some level.
You wouldn't go through a social welfare organization to.
Unless you're using unless your project is kind of social welfare oriented, that is using the art as a way of doing it.
Right. Okay. Now, who have you got your panel picked? Who chooses the projects? So we can start getting our bribes out right now.
Oh no, no bribes, please. Actually, it's an established committee. The Urban Enhancement Trust Fund it's an established committee set up by the city, and it's an 11-member committee that is that reviews all these. And so you have 9 members that represent the city districts, and then we have 2 at-large members. There are a couple vacancies on the committee that we're constantly trying to fill because people will come on and come off.
Right.
And if you're interested in serving on the Urban Enhancement Trust Fund, you should go to the Boards and Commissions website and put in your application, and it gets reviewed, and it's a way of giving back to the arts community by being able to review these applications and being involved on that level. So there's always a way to participate.
Yeah. Okay, well, we got about a minute left. I know you wanted to talk about the new logo.
We've got a new logo. So we mentioned the city's 33, or the program's 33 years old now, and so it was time for a little bit of a facelift. And so a little tuck here, a little nip there, and we went back to the original logo designer, Maggie McNabb, and she kind of has graciously kind of interpreted the logo. It's still very similar. It's just kind of a little bit more into the modern age, and it's actually also color now. So we have a color.
Oh, really? I didn't even know it wasn't color.
Yeah, we have a color version now that people can use to put on their brochures or things. But we still have the black and white if you absolutely have to print in black and white. So.
Okay. All right. That's great. Well, we'll look forward to seeing that. And again, folks can go to cabq.gov/UETF to get the applications and find out information.
And if they have questions, feel free to give me a call.
Okay, great. Well, Matt, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Always glad to talk about this great stuff.
Yeah, me too.
And thank you for joining us on Take Another Look, and we will see you next time around.